Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? Here we are, first session of the morning. Circular economy. We're going to talk from recycling to reuse, or to reusing, I should say. Good morning, Celia. How are you?
Good morning, Fernando. I'm very fine. And you?
Very good. Well, in a bit unexpected role, as the moderator has not been able yet to arrive. He's running a bit late because of the Parisian traffic. But here we are. It's a pleasure to be all this morning with you to do a keynote speech together with my dear friend Celia on how we go from recycle to reuse. And we are indeed the, I'll let Celia to present first.
Okay. Thank you, Fernando. So my name is Celia Hanson. I co-founded 8 years ago an association called the Réseau Vrac et Réemploi, which means the network for refill and reuse economic players in France. And since then, I am managing it with a team of 10 people.
Indeed. And I'm the director of New Era, which is the European homologue of Réseau Vrac et Réemploi. We are very much inspired by the amazing work that Celia and her team has done over the last years. And yeah, we're really trying to replicate it at the European level. So here we have a little presentation, Celia, if you want.
So Réseau Vrac et Réemploi, we created it 8 years ago to democratize, refill, and reuse systems in our everyday consumption. But 8 years ago, the market didn't really exist in France. So what we do is that we created the condition to structure the market. And the first steps is doing lobbying to create the right, the legal basis for refill and reuse to exist. Thus, we also created technical supports, materials and working group to guide enterprises, companies to develop their business in this new market. In parallel, we created also tools to develop this market, to develop businesses and activity in refill and reuse FMCG sector. We created a kind of fair like this one, but which is totally dedicated to refill and reuse solutions that we will present you in the end with Fernando, and that happens for the 6th edition in May in the Parc Floral of Paris, the 13th and 14th of May. We also do studies to understand the system, how to measure it, and what is the potential of this new model. And finally, we make promotion, because a lot of people know about recycle, but they do not know about refill and reuse, while it is in our everyday life. It is also in multi-sectors, from FMCG to HoReCa, but also to automotive industry. Refill and reuse is everywhere and has to be known more and more. That's why we do a lot of awareness-raising campaigns. And right now, in March, it is our dedicated month, Refill and Reuse Month edition nationally, and it is the 3rd one happening this year.
Thank you very much, Celia. So yeah, New Era, as I said, the European Business Federation representing this whole diverse reuse and refill value chain, from the manufacturing to the cleaning and washing services. We are quite young, I would say 15, 16 months now. As Celia said, we need to educate all policymakers, stakeholders, and express and transmit the message that today we don't have equal regulatory and economic conditions to compete against single-use packaging. So that's what we try to do throughout the different elements that Celia mentioned. Structure the sector, do lobbying actions, develop it as well throughout trade fairs, and also obviously promote it via awareness-raising campaigns. So diving into now what we are going to present today, because it's important that we understand a bit the context and where we are coming from.
So everybody knows about recycle, and I guess and I hope you know a bit also about refill and reuse. But do you know about the 3R hierarchy? The 3R hierarchy was set to optimize the management of waste. And it said that first you need, before you put on the market a product or a packaging, you need to think about reducing what you are going to put on the market. Then you need also to think about reusing a lot to save the raw materials that we need to produce. And then, in the end, everything that you produced, after you reduced and you reused, in the end, you need to make them 100% ideally recyclable. This is the 3R hierarchy. But for 60 years, we've been only focusing on the last one, recycle, which doesn't make sense when you know about the system, because we should have been focusing and spending our energy, spending our money on developing systems that focus on reduce and reuse, whereas on focusing on recycle first. We are not saying that they should be opposite, because in the end, a reused product or reused packaging will have to be recycled. We are just saying that we should go upstream the value chain, upstream the 3R hierarchy now. And we are going to tell you why. Because now, and for at least 10 years, 20 years, 60 years ago, we have been increasing our packaging waste. And in Europe, it's plus 21% of packaging waste increase in 10 years. And at the same time, recycle rates in general, so for all materials, because you know as us that, for example, some materials benefit from better rate in recycling than others. For example, glass, whereas plastic is not at its maximum at the moment. So we have an increase on one hand of packaging waste, and on the other end, we are stagnated at the European level on the recycle rate. We are back at the 2010 years ago rate, which is not possible in the moment when you know that the way we consume explode, and we do consume a lot outside, not in our place. The e-commerce also exploded, and the COVID crisis make all the packaging industry exploded even more. But for the first time in our lives, laws, European laws from multi-countries, so you have the European law PPWR, Fernando is going to tell you about, but also French law, AGEC, and also German law and Spanish law introduced for the first time objectives to reduce and reuse packaging. That's why now it's time to go from the recycle mindset and model to the reduce and reuse model and enter in this new era. So how work reuse? As you understand, it is a perpetual circle, because you extract some raw materials to produce something, to produce a packaging. You bought a product, and instead of throwing this packaging, so this packaging doesn't become a waste, it stays as it is, so you do not throw your bottle, you keep the bottle. And then you just give it back to a collection point where it will be cleaned, dry, and reused again for a second, third, until maybe 50 times. This is the perpetual circle of reuse and the model that we need to develop. As you know, or maybe you do not know, but by looking at those photos, you will understand that reuse packaging is already everywhere. We call it primary packaging, which is the packaging that's wrapping your product in FMCG sector, but also in automotive. You have it also in HoReCa sector, restaurants. We have it also on secondary packaging to group the products and transport them. And then also the third and logistics packaging. You have it also for e-commerce, for dry goods, for liquids. It's already there in our systems. We have the laws that are going to pushing them. Now we need to jump and to scale up. Because the benefits are huge. Of course, you understand the first benefits that we can gain are environmental. By doing this circle, we preserve, we save the resources, the raw materials, water, but also CO2 emission. And we make those products last many times, many life cycles. But the benefits are not only environmental, but also economic and social, because we are creating a new market beside recycle. And this new market, it's a 10 billion opportunity in Europe. And also, this, as a new market, you create new jobs, new industry. And then the potential is so huge in Europe. 600,000 jobs can be created beside recyclers. So now we need to embrace the new market, jump into it, and scale it.
Thank you very much, Celia. So yeah, here, to be honest, I don't know if it's going to work. There is a video that we wanted to showcase that we launched last year, which explains, I think, better than us speaking what reuse systems are and what the benefits are. I don't know if, no, it doesn't work. No problem. Okay, so I invite everyone to go on our website to check it out. Yeah, it's a 4-minute video. It's available in 5 languages, English, German, French, Spanish, and Italian. And yeah, we did it, and now you will see because of the PPWR negotiations. It was really, really tough, and to be honest, yeah, I think we captured in 4 minutes what reuse systems are, what are the benefits, and indeed, as Celia said, that reuse is now everywhere, and you can see it there, so please go for our website and check it out. Then I'm going to dive into the PPWR, which is being recently agreed within the EU institutions, as we need as well the policy to somehow support all the efforts that reuse operators are doing across Europe and beyond. So we have had, over, I would say, 18 months of very heated discussions in the European institutions and also at member states level. And recently, beginning of March, the institutions finally agreed on a text that now should be and hopefully validated in the next weeks and months. What this text contains, it's very important for, it's a very comprehensive, I would say, law that covers not only reuse, but also other elements across the waste management system. But for the first time, we have some mandatory reuse measures and refill measures included in the text, which is, I would say, an important milestone. So yeah, here you see we have these very controverted reuse and refill targets, also refill obligations and reuse offer in the HoReCa sector, restrictions for food contact packaging that contains PFAS. We also have, when it comes to plastics, has to be minimum recycled content in the plastic containers that we place in the market. We also have the obligation to reduce packaging by minimizing the empty space ratio in the packaging itself. We also have some restrictions for single-use packaging products, following a bit the example of the French anti-waste law, exactly, and circular economy law. And also finally, some waste prevention targets that we're also missing. Finally, we've put some targets there for the 2030, 2040 horizons, plus more also on recyclability. We have some more stringent measures to separate collection for single-use plastic bottles and containers. Let's dive 1 second at the targets, which is obviously maybe one of the most interesting, I would say, measures that has been adopted at the PPWR. it's trying to cover pretty much the whole spectrum of sectors where reuse is being used. So on one hand, we have the transport packaging sector, including e-commerce, where we have some targets for 2030 and 2040, up to 40 and 70%, which is good. However, there are some nuances, and I must say we were a bit disappointed because even though you cannot believe it, for e-commerce and also for transport packaging, cardboard boxes have been exempted. So we'll have to see what's the real impact of that, because obviously today, a large majority of the single-use containers that are used for e-commerce and transport come in a cardboard box. So that's, I would say, a bit, reducing the ambition, but there it is. Anyway, I think it's important to have some transport packaging. And by the way, for transport packaging, this has been now running for decades. I would say, since the 90s or even 80s before. A lot of sectors and industries have been using for internal logistics and also for shipping food products as well, plastic crates and other kind of reusable containers. Then we have on the other side, the beverage sector, which as well in countries like in Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium as well, it's very much developed, as you know, especially in the HoReCa sector. Today now we are also targeting the business to consumer area by putting some targets mandatory for 2030 and also a bit higher for 2040. There are also some exemptions, what we call highly perishable drinks, milk and wine products. One important thing to make, because it's all fine and dandy to have reuse targets, but we need to set up the necessary measures to make sure that the reuse systems work properly. So we have this important take-back obligation that includes the consumers and across the whole value chain, all the suppliers or the operators, distributors need to bring back the packaging once used. And then we also have some takeaway, was I would say, here we have Tim afterwards will tell us about his experience with VYTAL. One of the most controverted ones, whether we had to get targets for takeaway or not. Eventually, we have reuse offer for food and drinks. No targets, but at least the HoReCa distributors will have to offer consumers reusable containers. As well, they will be obliged to accept consumers bringing their own packaging. And finally, we have the retailers, where I would say it's a bit shy as well. We have not 20, but 10% of space. 20% is actually in the French law. That's why I'm confused. 20% of space dedicated to refill stations, if the premises are a bit over 400 meters square. So that's on the targets. And then other measures that are interesting to know, and maybe our panelists will go deeper. We have some infrastructure regarding the DRS schemes that will have to be set up to ensure the collection of both single-use and also obviously leverage from that infrastructure to use it for reusable packaging. We have some reuse and refill requirements when it comes to the governance, the traceability, distribution of cost of the systems, health hygiene standards, and so on. And we also have other more general circular measures regarding recyclability. All packaging will have to be not recyclable, but really recycle at scale, because one thing also for reusable, it's important to distinguish between what is reusable or what is recyclable and what actually gets recycled or gets reused, and that's what we need to aim for. And there are some elements that have not been addressed yet. The role of EPR schemes, even though they have, which is good, to invest at least minimum share of their budget, as it is the case in France. CITEO will explain it afterwards, what they're doing here in France. But voilà, a bit in a nutshell, that's a bit what the PPWR says. And as we said, we are very excited because here in less than 2 months, we are co-organizing with Resobrac the sixth edition of the Refill and Reuse Trade Fair, which will be the first time we are going international. We expect over 2,000 visitors from a very diverse wide of industries and sectors. Over 200 innovative solutions will be showcased and exhibited at the Parc Floral.
30 conferences.
Program of 30 conferences.
30 conferences and masterclass only dedicated to refill and reuse solution, and 75 speakers in Paris.
Exactly. So please, you have here the website to join us. And cherry on the cake, we have the Reuse Learning Expedition across Paris the following day, on the 15th, where everyone that wants to join will be delighted by seeing how reuse stakeholders in Paris are implementing reuse in action. So we'll have a washing facility, refill of cosmetics, takeaway, both for food packaging in-store and on the go. And we will end up with a very nice zero-waste buffet with other industry experts. So please join us also in Paris on 13, 14, 15 May. It's been great. I mean, we made it. Time is up, 12 seconds to go.
Perfect.
Crazy. So I hope you like it, the conference. And we give now the room to our panelists that we will go a bit deeper on the subject. So
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. And here I am, finally. Hi, everybody. How are you guys doing? All good? Yeah? Oh, I see nodding. Usually at conferences, the morning sessions are not as well seated as your guys. Did you not go to the side events yesterday? Are you the boring crowd? Is that it? No. You had a whiskey sour. Well, congratulations. So did I, actually. Great stuff that you guys are here. So sorry that I'm late. I was on my way here, stuck in traffic, and I believe I've probably heard every single French swear word there is. Not because I set them, but because my driver was very passionate about us being stuck in traffic. So apologies for that one. But of course, thank you all for being here and being so patient with us. Quick thing about myself. So my name is Laurent. I work for 4P Capital. 4P Capital is an impact asset management company that was built by entrepreneurial family offices, and we partner up with different family offices to essentially do one thing and one thing only, and that is create as much impact as possible by investing into companies at very early stages. So that's what we do. And so far about myself, but the people appearing on stage in just a second are probably far more interesting than I am, so let's focus on them instead of me. Right. For our next panel, or the first panel actually of this morning, for the circular economy from recycling to using to reusing, I would very much like to welcome on stage Ms. Christine Levesque, Vice President Collection and Recycling at Tetra Pak. Then we have Anne-Lucie Werquin, Head of Innovation at CITEO, and Bahar Koyuncu, Senior Policy Officer at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Please welcome our panelists. Thank you. So good to see you. So good to see you. That's okay. That's your own notes. Really? That's fine. Okay. How did that happen? Oh, well. Apologies. All right. Maybe we start with you guys introducing yourselves, because you are so much better at doing that than I am. So maybe we'll start with you automatically.
First of all, good morning. It's such a pleasure with you today amongst the change makers. I don't know if the microphone is working.
It is,
yes,
yeah.
It is, okay. So I work for the Ellen MacArthur Foundation as a senior policy officer. I focus mainly on plastics and packaging as part of the policy and institutions team. At the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, we work together with businesses, governments, academia, NGOs, and many others in order to accelerate the transition to a circular economy. The circular economy we envision is built on key three principles. It's eliminating waste and pollution by design, circulating materials and products at their highest value possible, and regenerating nature. In this context, we have had several publications that we looked into in terms of packaging and plastics. We focused on reuse. We also in the global commitment, which represents around 20% of the global plastics value chain together with UNEP.
Well, I've called you Christine before. I'm so sorry, Gilles.
No, that's fine. I'm actually replacing my colleague Christine, who is unfortunately sick. So my name is Gilles Tisserand. I work for Tetra Pak as the Vice President Climate, Nature, Water, Product Sustainability. So there's actually three reasons why we are here today. First of all, of course, I will talk about what Tetra Pak does when it comes to recycling. I think you know that a player in the world of packaging, but packaging for food. That's the second reason why I wanted to be here today on that stage. Tetra Pak is more than packaging. We have lots of solutions upstream when it comes to processing food, transforming food, and actually a lot of the product that we are working on end up in other type of packaging, including reuse. So we are kind of agnostic when it comes to understanding how we need to transform food so that it's safe and available. And the third reason, also, now benefiting from the fact that I'm replacing my colleague Christine, is that on my scope, I look into product sustainability and climate and nature. So I would love also to have, rapidly, I know that it's short, some sort of holistic view on how we need to look into packaging, into the broader view. So what's the climate impact, nature impact of the package, but also what it protects. So I think there's also a point that we need to discuss about the type of packaging and the product that it protects. So that's why I'm here, and welcome everybody.
Yes, I'm very glad to be here, everybody. So my name is Anne-Lucie Werquin, and I'm head of innovation at CITEO. CITEO is a non-profit product responsibility organization. We have to implement what we call the extended producer responsibility scheme in France for household packaging and graphic papers. So it's a little bit barbaric. So to put it simple, every time you buy a product, it comes with a packaging, and industrial companies have to pay a financial contribution, and CITEO takes this financial contribution and uses it to finance the collection, the sorting, and the recycling of packaging. And our mission at CITEO is to reduce the environmental impact of packaging and papers in France. And we work with all the actors in the value chain, so industrial companies, retailers, but also we engaged with citizens to have a good sorting habits. And we also work with local authorities, municipalities, to help them collect, sort, and recycle the waste.
Thank you so much. Let's start with the holistic view, because I like to start panels with that usually. And I'm going to be very upfront, Bahar. Do you agree with the title of the panel? Is it From Recycling to Reusing?
We were just discussing about that before we came on stage. You were not here yet. And we have diverse points of views. Let me put it that way. I think we would change the order. That would have been a wiser approach. Well, having said that, yeah, I think both have a role to play, but we need to definitely accelerate our uptake of reuse systems, and those reusable packaging need to be recyclable at the end of their lives.
There is something you have to say about that.
Well, of course, and I would like to come back to as Celia and Fernando presented, because, and by the way, when you look at PPWR, the packaging waste regulation, when you look at the ongoing discussion with the UN Plastic Treaty, which somehow we don't talk about, but it's basically the cup of plastic, which is super important. There are obviously lots of discussion about the 3R and the hierarchy, and at Tetra Pak we strongly support the 3R hierarchy, right? You have to reduce, you have to reuse, you have to recycle. Then there's the whole question about where are the biggest impacts, where you need to start, and where actions can be taken. I think the PPWR, Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, is a good example of what governments need to push, because as, again, we've heard in the morning, to push reuse, you need to have scalability and you need to have the legislative model to support that. It's actually the same case on recycling. Recycling is suboptimal. That's a reality. We've seen the figures, though it's kind of different from a country to another. It's also very different when you look at the different type of materials / type of products. Tetra Pak, I've mentioned, is a company that works on food, to protect food, from the process piece to the packaging piece. And we do work on some sensitive, highly perishable product. So the question is about how we can ensure that reuse can make sense. That's what we do with the process piece. And yet, there's still a strong place for what we call single-use package, which de facto is, yes, single-use, but in that case, we need to ensure that the product is properly designed. So the beginning of the life of the product, the design piece is super important. The collection happens, that's where CITEO comes into the picture, sorting happens, and of course, recycling happens, which we've heard, again, from Fernando and Celia, is very different from a package to another. But I would say it's not reuse versus recycling. We have to improve those 3R. The reduction piece comes a lot through legislation. Reuse and recycling also has to be pushed by that, but I wouldn't say, I think the worst thing that we can do is to oppose reuse and recycling. By the way, we need to design reuse for later on recycling, as Celia mentioned, 50 cycles, 20 cycles. At the end, we also need to think about that.
Anne-Lucie, do you agree it's not a versus, it's an and?
Yes, it's definitely and. So as Celia put it in her introduction, we used to focus on recycling, and at CITEO we've done so since 1992, so since the creation of the extended producer responsibility. But we are faced with serious issues in the world right now, and we came up to the conclusion that recycling was not enough. So now CITEO engages all its stakeholders on 3 R's, so reduce, reuse, and recycle. So yes, it's not an opposition, but it's an end, definitely.
I see that. My best guess in many cases, it is a lot of it's being recycled that could also be reused at one point, when we look at the final use of the products in themselves. Now, what can business leaders do, you guys believe, or maybe we'll start with you, Bahar, again. What can business leaders do to really identify the quickest wins to maybe make the switch from a mainly recycled dominance kind of product to maybe a reuse kind of situation?
I think what we need is a systems thinking, so really rethinking the packaging, the product, the service that we are trying to provide to the users. And that requires a comprehensive approach, starting with really thinking whether we need it in the first place. So elimination would be the very first approach in it. And actually, through the global commitment that I have mentioned, the signatories have shown that it's possible to eliminate some of the more problematic packaging that can hinder, for example, recyclability and at the end of its use life. And the other thing is reuse. It has to be really a design-in feature, and it cannot be an afterthought. So it has to be a part of the design of the packaging and of the system, because just having the packaging will not be sufficient. And we definitely need reuse systems, because the current leakages are enormous. So it's estimated that around 10 million tons of plastic is entering the ocean every year. More than 160 million tons of plastics already in the ocean. And single use alone cannot solve that problem. So we need also reuse. And then, as mentioned before, recycling then comes, because you have to make sure that the packages are designed in a way that they have the recyclability features designed in, and there's also the infrastructure around to collect and to sort and to recycle those packages.
Besides coming to conferences like these, it sometimes is hard for people to understand that there is a full concept to this. So it's not just at the end of the life cycle of the product where we need to look at the product itself, but it starts with the entire design, and that's sort of what you say as well with the system thinking. So what are resources, maybe for you, Anne-Lucie, what are resources that business leaders can use currently to really encompass that in their organizations today?
Well, at CITEO, we embarked on an innovation journey back in 2017. We identify innovative solutions that can bring, innovative solutions through the value chain. So innovation and a mindset, like an entrepreneur mindset, is really an added value, I believe, because entrepreneurs are agile, are quick, and can really make a difference. And I think we are here, changemakers on this event shows this as well. And so since 2017, we have accelerated about 70 projects on the whole value chain. And I will not say that innovation is only technology-oriented, but can be. And I will talk about artificial intelligence and how it can, help on the sorting and recycling part of the work. So IA used, because it's a hot topic, this is why I'm talking about it. So IA could help on the sorting side for you consumers. So we have bins, we call them smart bins, that could help you detect if you're doing the right sorting gesture and tell you to put it in the right bin. On collection, you embed IA on collection trucks. that can detect non-recyclables and help local municipalities engage with citizens to have a better sorting habits. So a startup like Lixo can do this, and in sorting centers, a startup like Grey Parrots can detect non-conformities, which can lead to serious safety issues, but also detect the different kind of materials, so separates cardboard from plastic, from steel, but also detect the different kind of plastics. And having better sorted materials can lead to a higher quality rate recycled material.
Mm. Maybe to the crowd, how many of you, by the show of hands, how many of you consider themselves entrepreneurs? Anybody in the recycling and using space? Amazing. AI-driven? No. I would love to give you a microphone, but we'll probably have... Sorry. Okay, I see. The entrepreneurial spirit that you just talked about, I think, is incredibly important, especially in very established companies as well. It sometimes feels like for innovation to happen, it needs to come from within, and it needs to come from the people who work in the front of it and not really the people who manage top-down kind of situation. Now, at Tetra Pak, how do you manage this innovative side of things, essentially, that you make sure that you are well positioned in this recycling versus and reusing state?
I like the question because at the end of the day, well, Tetra Pak is being present in 190 countries, so that's pretty much as much as the members of countries part of FIFA. So that's a lot. So we have a responsibility, as I've mentioned, to ensure that our products, from a design perspective, are designed and built with recycling in mind and with low carbon in mind. I also take my climate hat once again. So we have, from the origin, but it has accelerated now 20 years ago, put lots of focus on working ourselves on our design requirements and actually working with the industry and the legislators on setting standards. So that's what I call innovation in regulation, because you have to ensure, and that's the same case on reuse, you have to ensure that you have a model and a setup that maximize, in a way, the design for recycling. Two examples that I can give you as well on best practices, not so much in terms of entrepreneurship, but in terms of, well, best practices of good companies. We have made a conscious choice, actually now 7 years ago, to push polymers made from sugarcane origin. And the rationale is that it brings up to minus 40% CO2 reduction. But then the question was, do we go with climate, and does it go against recycling? Well, in that case, we've managed to develop this polyethylene, PE, which fits exactly the criteria and the mechanical properties that we needed for recycling. Okay, so we have managed to make that move from fossil-based plastic to plant-based with the same mechanical properties, minus 40% recycling. Recently, we've put on the market a paper-based barrier, which replaces aluminum for the product that have a long shelf life. And aluminum is great, but it has a high CO2 impact. In certain parts of the world, it's hard to recycle. In Europe, it's pretty okay. But then the question was about how can we replace that, right? And we had originally pushed or tried out a barrier made of plastic, PET, which in the stream that we have for beverage carton was actually impacting the quality of recycling and therefore the value. So it was a no-go for our partner in the recycling value chain. And we eventually decided to move to paper-based because that's where the value is today in the recycling stream. It's with the recycling of the fiber part. So that design thinking was very important because we are making conscious choice of materials, having in mind end of life, and actually I should call it new life, and the climate element. Then let's talk about partnership, and I will actually follow through your value chain approach. Collection, sorting, recycling. Collection, we have to work as a company with the EPR company like CITEO, Eco-Embastes in Spain, Fosplus in Belgium, to ensure that people know that they can recycle beverage carton. And this is not necessarily known, and we are seeing typically PPWR pushing to have a deposit return system for plastic and aluminum, and sometimes we forget about beverage carton. So there might be a risk there, and we have to educate, and that's where we are also working with startups. There's an example with Trizi in the CITEO environment with whom we have been working actually now for years to educate consumers and we put advertising ourselves, we pay our customers to put advertising to tell consumers that they can recycle. AI is something that we are looking into sorting, and we actually are testing solutions in Australia right now with robotic arms so that we can better sort. So we reduce the non-sorted beverage cartons in the sorting centers, and then innovation is also looking into business model when it comes to new life. I've talked about the paper fiber part of the package, which is very well recycled today. If you know brands like Lotus, well, there's a big chance that in France they come from beverage cartons, actually. That's an example, but the polymers and aluminum part is something on which we need to think about the business model. PPWR is pushing even more typically for reuse, transport, packaging, aka pallets and crates. Well, the plastic and aluminum part of the beverage cartons are great materials to make plastic. So we have created partnership with companies like Capca, the #1 reusable pallet producers, and working on business model so that they can reuse the elements of the package. So long answer, sorry for that, but it's a mix of innovation that you have to go through internally from R&D and also the business model piece.
Long answer, but still a very thoughtful one. The last 7 minutes we have, let's spend it on the future. And let's paint a greener picture altogether. So Bahar, we have AI sorting, we have material innovation, we have the corporate entrepreneurship essentially that you guys are doing at Tetra. We have the amazing founders out here who are changing the game. What do you think will fundamentally change essentially about the topic that we're talking about today?
I think it's great that we have many solutions out there. So we have also actually modeled and we tried to envision a future reuse system in a recent study by the MacArthur Foundation, where we see that the higher the level of collaboration in the system, the higher the level of environmental benefits in terms of greenhouse gas saving emissions, water savings, up to 70% basically. This means collaboration means sharedness of infrastructure, so accessibility to the end users and sharedness by the different businesses around it, as well as some level of harmonization of packaging that helps those benefits to become even more become higher basically. And also on the economic side, what we see is that the higher the collaboration level for reuse systems, the more competitive it becomes in terms of economical terms for versus single use as well. So we need that level of collaboration, and it's not only between the businesses, it's also with the financial institutions that need to invest into this transition and de-risk the transition, because reuse requires the infrastructure, as also is the case for recycling, but this is relatively new. And we also need the policy, basically, the policymakers to collaborate together with the businesses and financial institutions. And here there are very exciting developments. The UN Plastics Treaty is once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as we call it, which can really provide the framework for reuse systems, to provide definitions, standards, to provide the incentives to shift for the shift to reuse systems. And we also then have also packaging and packaging waste regulation, but that was discussed a lot in detail. But I think that's a very important step in EU as well to foster that transition, because what happens today is that the reuse is around well below 2%, based on our study with 20% of the packaging value chain. Despite there are pilots in place of about 60% of these businesses, but they remain in silos and they need that multi-retailer, multi-brand collaboration to make it a reality and to make the reuse revolution a reality, basically.
Anne-Lucie, I have to ask you the same question.
What the future looks like? Well,
yeah.
That's a very tough question, actually.
That's why I'm asking it.
Yes. Well, I think, you know, the future will be maybe a mix of, you know, technology and sobriety. And I think we shall not oppose them. And the future is probably, you know, somewhere in between. And I think we need to project ourselves in this future. And at CITEO, we launched prospective projects on the house of tomorrow or on the future of retailing, to be able to foresee what a new consumer journey will be, what your lives will be. You know, the public space will need to adapt to climate change, to the growth of population, consumption will change. So we are looking into that. We cannot tell right now what the future will be like, but I think it's very exciting to be part of this change. And you know, we're here, we're all change makers, and I think we all have a role to play in this change. So you know, let's act together. So if you're interested in the topic, come talk to us.
Gilles, there is one word I think we've said the most in many different versions, and it's the word collaboration. What can people do today to collaborate better?
Yeah, I think it's actually dangerous to have antagonistic approach when it comes to packaging in general. So collaboration is super key. Open mindset is super key, and that's why we need to welcome the reuse associations getting there. We need to welcome the work that packaging associations are going through and push that dialogue like we have today, even if it's only 25 minutes and continuing, I would say, to build upon. To me, what matters, again, if I can answer on what the future would look like, I think the future needs collaboration, and it needs to happen through legislators, associations, consumers, retailers, industrials. So it's a big, big value chain. If I can talk about food packaging, we don't want food to be wasted, and there are challenges across that value chain, and we need to make life easy for consumers. And that's where the innovation comes with, as we have discussed today, and reuse is part of the solutions, and choosing recyclable package with low carbon is also part of the solution.
This is a hard one because we have 2 more minutes left, right? Closing notes. In the end, 2%, you said, 2%, right? Only 2% of products are currently reused. But that's probably not all that can be reused. So for us to push forward to the agenda, for us to be, let's say, more efficient in what you do in order to understand what can we recycle, should we recycle, what can we reuse, and should we reuse, it needs A, collaboration, you said it, innovation on both the material end and the digital end. Then policy and makers need to be back on board with us to make sure that we push, or let's say incentivize, the right business practices. And then in the end, and above all of that, it's a mindset thing. And the mindset thing is really easy to achieve when you sit in a big crowd and you listen to one thing and you agree and you go, yes, that's the one. So maybe for the last minute, I invite you all, take that mindset that we have now gotten, thanks to you, the 3 of you, take it outside, inspire others, and when we come back in a couple of years, this stage is going to be huge. Policymakers, innovators, they're all going to be sitting here and going to say, you know what? We're glad we came here. And with that, I've wasted enough time to finally do the closing notes. Thank you so, so much. Thank you for your time. Bahar, so lovely. Thank you so much. Pleasure, absolutely. Please. Good stuff. And we're getting a little bit more water. I see that you guys are still alive. Are you? Yeah, good stuff. Does anybody know where we can find breakfast? Thank you. Right. Let us, in that case, for the last part of this conference, let us do the lovely fireside chat. Now, I believe our speaker is already back on stage, so I'm going to introduce him real quick. We have the co-founder and managing director of VYTAL, Mr. Tim Breker. So please put your hands together and welcome with me on stage, Tim.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Please have a seat. Thank you so much for bringing me my breakfast. I was talking about it just now. How are you doing, Tim? You all good?
Very good, very good. Glad to see so many beautiful people here.
Yeah, right? The turn-up is amazing. I mean, there is a row, there is 5 stools up here that are still empty. So for the people who are not afraid of sitting in front rows when they go to comedy shows or panels, feel free. It's also the row that you get talked to the most.
I used to work as a teacher, so yeah, I know the stigma of the first row.
I can imagine. Thank you for being brave enough to join the first row. Amazing. You used to be a cheater. I didn't know about that. Maybe we'll start with exactly that. How did your way from being a teacher to then becoming one of the thought leaders in the space, how did that happen?
Well, I think when I look back is that actually during my high school, I was privileged to go on a scholarship to the US for a year during high school, and my host father was a serial entrepreneur. Very inspiring guy, and what I learned from him is really to understand entrepreneurship as a tool in our hands to create change in the world. And this is, I guess, what unites all of us being here, that we really want to change something and that we want to take action. And so I did that, and after my bachelor's in business, I decided to join a program that's called Teach First Germany, and it sends you, as a university graduate that did not study to be a teacher, for 2 years to work as a teacher, doing projects with the most challenging, one of the most challenging high schools of the country. And this was my stint into the school, and I worked 2 years teaching English and math and business. And I also taught entrepreneurship, and that actually led me to my first company, which I started before VYTAL. Was also an impact company. I ran a franchise network for student-run school kiosks, so teaching entrepreneurship to 9th and 10th graders, and hopefully, creating some entrepreneurial spirit in them to go out and change the world as well.
We had a call before that, of course, and I loved this idea of the school kiosks. I really did. But when I thought about it later, I was like, what kind of products would they probably push onto that market that would not be that helpful to everybody?
Well, I think products that would have made like a ton of revenue but weren't allowed to sell were like single cigarettes, right? Yeah. But no, jokes aside, so we sold sandwiches, water, apple juice mixed with water, tea, coffee, these kind of things. And the coolest thing was when teachers came to buy stuff from the students, they loved it. It was a boost in confidence, and was very, very good.
I love that. I love that. That's how I'm going to have my kids make breakfast for us. By just selling it to me. Tell me about VYTAL. Maybe we now go into the topic a little bit. And let us start with the problem that you are solving.
Well, I think it's rather simple, right? So for Germany, I know the number pretty well. So it's 14 billion single-use food and drink containers that we waste in Germany every year. For the European Union, it should be around 66 billion single-use items. And if you think about all these packages that have been, created from precious resources, then maybe used for coffee to go, or I saw here paper cups for espresso to go. Like, why do we need an espresso to go? But anyways, so they are only used a couple of minutes and then thrown away, and hopefully recycled, but we also need to understand that especially if containers are contaminated with fat and other food residuals, they're not easily recycled. So it's clearly the case in the takeaway packaging industry that we need to move to reuse as the standard. And we also use reusable plates at home, right? So we should also be able to use it in the gastronomy and at events.
I would have loved to have you on the panel before. You would have probably contradicted a couple of the statements. Am I getting this right, that you say we need to move to reuse from also recycling?
Yeah, I think so. What I want to add maybe to the panel that you guys just heard was that I really love the end about the mindset, right? Because if you think about reuse, oftentimes people look at all the barriers, the challenges and so on, and they look not so much on the bright side, on the benefits of reuse, right? From a really total cost perspective, it's more economically and obviously more environmentally friendly than single-use containers. And it's also a new opportunity for brands to move closer to the consumers and really create lasting relationships. And this is something where I think we really have the technology available, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, to make very efficient reusable supply chains or reusable value chains. So really from basically production of containers to reusing, and then end of life or beginning of new life. And so we should use that and really leverage the economic benefits of reusables. And yes, this was also mentioned before, we need to have a regulatory context in order to make this happen and make this profitable for all the involved companies. because in the end, there are still today quite a number of switching costs from this, optimized in decades single-use linear value chain to move to a circular value chain that in the full-scale system will be much more economical than the current single-use value chains.
Use me, baby, one more time. Did you come up with that?
I think it was Britney Spears.
Good answer. Tell me about this. This feels very great, first and foremost. And it's black, which is why I'm definitely sold on it anyways. What makes this different?
Well, so this is a high-quality polypropylene reusable coffee cup. It obviously is much nicer to drink from a reusable cup than it is from a single-use one. And we can use it at least 200 times. Right? So it has a unique ID. You might have seen the QR codes here. We also have actually the first smart cup with dual tracking technology. So we have an individual QR code and also a unique RFID ID. And this enables us really to make these very efficient reusable supply chains. So using the RFID to optimize costs and really reduce the need for staff and labor, from taking reusables back to the logistics, the sorting, the cleaning, and then the redistribution. And then we have this QR code to engage the consumer and really open up complete new digital worlds where, for example, if you drink from this Pepsi cup at a music festival, you can, maybe win a meet and greet with the star, or at least get 20% off your next Pepsi. And if the same container is in a football stadium, you get a different kind of promotion. At a trade fair, you can have a total new digital experience behind the physical asset. And this is something that I mean when I talk about the benefits of reuse. So we should really look at the opportunities that are created by high-quality reusable packaging. And those are certainly also economical.
I remember when we were kids, I'm not sure if they had that in Germany as well, where there was this, McDonald's did this Monopoly game where you could collect all these Monopoly stickers, but it was all plastic, wasn't it? It was
yes,
all plastic.
It's one of the most successful consumer engagement, I think, games or measures or however you want to call it. Yeah. But exactly, this is something that you can easily transform and transfer into the digital world. And I think that those are the opportunities that lie, or some of the opportunities that lie in reusable packaging.
Totally see that. So for all the entrepreneurs in the audience, what you present us with here is a final product, but oh my goodness, you didn't start with that. Can you tell us about the story of founding VYTAL and then essentially the sort of the hiccups you had and the roadblocks you saw in your way to finally making this beautiful product?
Very happy to do so. So I think when you think about reuse and this transition that we have to go through from the linear economy to the circular economy, one of the key challenges is scale, right? Because this is where you get all the benefits from reusables, and this is what you are compared to in the current world with the scale and the optimizations that already have been happening in the linear economy. And so what we did in order to start the journey was really basic, right? My co-founders and I, we used to work for the Boston Consulting Group as management consultants. And we always went to the same 5 restaurants around the office to grab lunch. So this is the restaurants that we started with. Then we kind of expanded to all the canteens and collective catering restaurants of our BCG clients. And this is how we started. And if we think about the gastronomy and restaurants and canteens, it's rather small to medium volume use cases for reusables, right? I think thanks to COVID, the share of takeaway in canteens has really picked up and is now at 10 to 20%. But back then, when we started, it was rather around 5%. And so you talk about small, medium number of reusables. So you can use QR codes as a means to track and trace the reusable containers. Now, since last year, we have upgraded our tracking capacity to also incorporate RFID. And this is, for example, what is going into the Pepsi cup. And this is what you need for high-volume use cases of reusables, right? So think about an event like this with 35 million thousand visitors. This is where you need it. Think about the Apple Park canteen, where every day they hand out 14,000 lunch meals. in single-use containers today, right? For those numbers, this is where you need RFID-based tracking, and this is what we are offering right now, and where we see massive traction from the space, from large corporate campuses, but also large events. So I'm very excited for the Summer Olympics in Paris, where we will supply the German stadium, the German delegation with reusables, and this is what we do. And I think, looking back, I still remember the lunches with the team, with the VYTAL team, where we had like 10 containers in front of us for lunch, and then we looked at the dashboard and saw that the total number of checkout that day was 20. So when we look back in those days, we can be extremely proud that we have already replaced 8.8 million single-use items. At the same time, if we look at the 14 billion that I mentioned in the beginning that are wasted in Germany every year, you see that, yes, we achieved scale, and I'm very proud that we're one of the largest systems, reusable digital platform providers in the world. Right? So we have 600,000 registered users, for example, 7,000 partner gastronomists. So we are reaching scale, but I think this new technology of RFID-based tracking, everything that comes with it, will even boost us even further. And yet, there's a long way to go. And yeah, this is the large and huge business opportunity that presents itself to circular economy entrepreneurs, and that we also want to go after.
Mm. I really like what you said about starting small and sort of starting with what you knew. And you started with the restaurants that you went to, and these were your first customers, and then you iterated and you became bigger and bigger. In my job, what I see is a lot of the founders, they think big very early on, but that then is tied to a certain level of perfectionism, where almost you feel like your product is never ready to go out, and you never feel like, oh my God, maybe my first customers are gonna judge me in the end for what I'm putting out here, and maybe I should iterate again and again and again. What do you say to founders who are in that loop of their thought process? How have you seen things differently in what you did?
It's certainly not a quote from myself, but I don't know who said it the first, basically. But if you don't feel ashamed of your first product, then you've started too late into the market. So this is something that I can definitely quote. So, you know, for the most part, users use the VYTAL app to use our system. And if you download it, you see we have partner gastronomists in France and many different countries. Actually, we're available across 15 countries in 10 different languages. But the way we started was really with a paper-based stamp card for our first consumers. The first 200 VYTAL users, they registered in person with us standing in front of the restaurants, and yeah, actually used the system with a paper stamp card. So this is how we started, for example. So the advice is really to just get started, get out. The feedback from the market is the most valuable. You will move the fastest forward. So just get it on.
Just get it on. Now, what's next for you guys?
So as mentioned, we want to reach scale. So we are enlarging basically our number of container under management with the VYTAL platform. So we currently have around 850,000 container under management. And we will expand this to 2.5 million this year, which is super nice because one of the challenges that we've recently solved is also that we can now get these containers from suppliers on a pay-per-use basis. Again, mindset, right? What are the benefits of circular systems and reusable packaging? Our suppliers can now make much more money with us participating on the value creation along each cycle, along the full lifetime of a container. So instead of selling us the container only once in the beginning, they can make much more revenue with us by participating in the value creation over the lifetime. So it's better margins for them. For us, it's better cash flow because we don't have to pre-finance the containers. And this really allows us to scale quickly. And so with that having a check mark, we're of course looking for investment. So if you want to join the ride because you're investing into the circular economy, let's talk. And then, yeah, well, I think well on track to reach the ambition to really establish a global operating system for reusable packaging.
So whoever isn't an investor in the room, how can they support you guys in the mission?
Yeah, I think this is exactly it, right? Provide the equity, provide the capital that is needed to scale. I think we have a very smart approach, creating this ecosystem that is necessary to really optimize the circular supply chain based on one single system. And we haven't even started thinking about what we can do with the data that we generate with each transaction of borrowing and returning a container. With consumer engagement, you mentioned the monopoly, right? There are lots of very good ideas that you can create, something like a lottery for everyone that's using reusables is participating in a lottery automatically and so on. So very, very cool things ahead of us. And I invite you, if you want to join the ride, we're vital for the planet.
And with that, thank you so much, Tim, for joining us.
Thank you.
Danke dir vielmals. All right, and the second thanks to you guys, of course, for joining us here at the stage, on stage, next to the stage, standing up, sitting down, filling up the front row, smiling at us, and supporting the cause. Thank you for being here.